Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some malicious compliance stories and our first story of the day is by Nataz FTW. Nope, still didn't scan. Texas has the strange idea that providing you a driver's license the day you go to the DMV is risky. As such, they give you a piece of paper printed out in black and white and mail you the actual license at a later date. This is a bit strange as it creates a period where people carry a valid legal document that looks like a 5th grader pasted a headshot in MS Paint. This created an awkward dynamic when I worked at a gas station. What do people go to gas stations for? After gas, the most common things are lottery, beer, and smokes. All of these are age restricted and have rather intense laws surrounding unlawful sales. To help avoid the nasty fines, etc. associated with these, my gas station has a pair of rules. 1. For anyone you're not 100% sure is over 30, ask if they're over 30 and card them if you're not convinced they're older than 30 after said answer. Yes, the question was stupid, but whatever. 2. Scan all IDs to ensure they're legitimate documents and not fakes. At their face, they sound reasonable. Though the second caused an odd situation where fancier states had 3D barcodes instead of magnetic strips, meaning I couldn't sell. And this story is obviously heading towards the paper the DMV gives people. Here's one such story. It's a small rush, 3 to 4 people in line, and a younger guy comes in to buy beer. I'm honestly not sure if he's 21, so he's clearly not 30. I ask the nonsensical question because really I can be fired if I just card him without asking the question. He tells me he's not older than 30. I ask for his ID and he fumbles to pull out the dreaded paper ID. Now, the combination of Texas and my employer have put everyone into a frustrating situation. In addition to Texas using these silly paper IDs, state law also requires you to get an acceptable ID before making any sale once you've asked for ID. In other words, you can't ask for ID and then determine you believe they're old enough. If you doubted enough to ask, you're liable for any sale. I see the ID and immediately feel bad. I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to take that ID. I recommend trying the gas station down the street that has different ownership and potentially more consumer-friendly rules. He provided the common response to ask why can't I take it. I explained to him the corporate policy requires I scan the magnetic strip of all IDs to verify their authenticity, and they've explicitly decided against waiving that for paper IDs. He instantly gets furious and tells me to scan the ID. This one caught me off a bit, and I asked him, "Are you serious?" To which he told me, "Yes, now scan my darn ID." Befuddled, I take the folded up piece of paper and slide it through the magnetic strip reader. "Sorry, sir, it didn't scan." This started a chain of events where each thing seemed more unrealistic. His response was, "You didn't even try." I asked if he'd like me to try harder to scan the ID, and he said he did. I looked at him confused and tried several different ways to slide this folded up piece of paper, unfolded piece of paper, slowly slide, quickly slide, used multiple scanners, etc. to get it to scan. Nope, still didn't scan. I hand it back to him and he's over the top at this point. It's also worth noting the line behind him is now about 10 people strong, including a few regulars watching in amazement as I'm remaining calm. He starts cussing me out and demands a contact for my manager. I pull out our paperwork and provide him a number for our corporate office. "No, stupid, I want your manager, not your corporate office." "Okay, I gave you my manager's manager." I gladly handed him the store's number, which would come to me, and shared the hours my manager typically worked so he'd be free to try to call. After he left, I made a point to apologize to each person in line for the extra wait, while each also expressed surprise I hadn't snapped at the dude. Needless to say, he never made a call to my manager, though I don't know if he ever found his beer. If this was you, would you have entertained them for so long for something that's so clearly just brainless, mindless, ignorant requesting of you? There's no way a piece of paper is going to scan in a magnetic ID scanner. Let me know at what point you would have shut them down in the comments down below. Our next story is by Cole Carmett. Teach you something you don't know? Sure. Going through school, I got involved with a volunteer first aid brigade through a friend who I will call Jim. As a result, I became one of the youngest medical first responders in the country due to how much work I put in. I was trained to use the AED, shown how IVs worked, not use them, hook up people to oxygen tanks, and other stuff that you wouldn't be taught in a regular first aid course. I was age 14 and helped quite a few people as a result of my training and volunteer work. Can't say that I officially saved any lives though, but I digress. Shortly after getting out of high school, I got a job as a first aid instructor for a short while. Though admittedly my age, I believe 17 to 18 at the time, didn't really inspire much confidence in my trainees, as most were much older than me. In many cases, I was assigned to renew people's certificates rather than actually teaching. In other cases, my class didn't really take me seriously due to my age. I didn't really mind this as I was passionate about it at the time, having the knowledge that what I am teaching could possibly save people's lives. In this particular class, my clients were a class of high school students who needed their basic first aid for their classes. I don't recall what for exactly. This is a 5 to 6 hour course that ends with multiple choice test. Easy money. This was at the high school I went to, and surprise of surprises, this was a teacher I didn't particularly enjoy having. Not as bad as Mrs. Grump from my last story, we still got along for the most part, but her way of teaching was awkward. It's a little difficult to describe without being in her class personally. She always acted as though the students knew all the answers but were too shy to speak. Even if a student said they didn't know, she would say things like, "It's okay to answer, nobody's judging," and stuff like that. As I was not much older than the students, they weren't listening to me. There was one group of students that kept shouting, "Tell us something we don't know." I know, the basic first aid course, at least at this time, was repeating the same thing over and over again until you're brainwashed to repeat it, but show some respect. Teacher, of course, no help. During the break, the teacher took me aside and told me to teach the students something they didn't know. A lot of the basic first aid is common knowledge and common sense. "You're holding back, you know a lot more than what you're teaching. Show the students you know more than them." Okay, sure. I talked to the principal of the school, who I was in good terms with, about what the teacher said and the students. And with his and the master instructor's permission, I added in a little-known module in the handbook to the lesson. When the students come back in, I start to talk. Some of you expressed that you want me to teach you something you don't know. Normally, at this point, I would show you a video about asthma, but as I'm sure everyone knows about it, I have gotten special permission to change the lesson. Everyone, please turn to Module 28 in the textbook. The students complied and a few gasps and chuckles echoed through the room. The teacher doubled over laughing, losing her own composure as well. So admittedly, I will be teaching this directly from the instructor's handbook as I have never taught this module personally. We are going to be starting with a video. The class then proceeded to watch a 7-minute video on how to perform emergency childbirth. The video, fortunately, wasn't graphic, but certainly informative. Afterwards, I called the students that had been going, "Teach us something we don't know," to come to the front and demonstrate the proper technique, using one of the CPR dummies as mother and a head as the baby. Finally, we discussed how to take care of the placenta and how to administer ongoing care. After the module, the students were extremely attentive to say the least. Now that I have taught you something you don't know, how about we get through the rest of the lesson without any more interruptions? The class complied and no one interrupted me the rest of the session. Despite the malicious compliance, I didn't get in any trouble for it and continued to teach the classes for the school first aid until I let my instructor's certification expire. The next time I went in, the teacher warned the students that I would teach them something they didn't want to know if they interrupted me. And that, dear reader, is the time I taught a class of high schoolers how to perform emergency childbirth. I doubt I would ever get away with doing something like this now, but I will always remember this moment. I think one of the best things in this story is the fact that they went to the proper administration and got approval for this malicious compliance. So no matter what, they weren't ever going to really be in direct trouble for it, and they were able to pull it off and get the students to respect them a little bit more. Our next story is by Communist Creeper 8. Put my hair up? Okay. Story time, yay! So my uncle, whom is my guardian, is very strict on what he expects. I am a female, so he decides that I must conform to the little girl stereotype. I'm 13. The fact that I am incredibly tomboyish helps this happen. Entitled uncle says, "Go put your hair up, you're a little girl and you need to look the part." I say, "But why? I'm perfectly okay with my hair down." "Well, I'm not. Go put it up. You're a little girl, you need to look pretty." So I did exactly what he asked. I found the most boy-like hat I had, I put it on over my oversized sweater, my combat boots, and a bandana. I pulled my hair through the opening in the back where you adjust it, and walked out to face him. I will never forget the horrified look on his face when I walked out looking more like a guy than before. He didn't say anything, but kept giving me side glares like he was on the verge of wringing my neck. All I could say is, I put my hair up. Yeah, I kind of hate most of everything coming from the entitled uncle in this story. I just really hate that they're trying to dictate what you can and can't look like. Nobody needs that. This next story is by Superfle. Oh, I'll clean the oven. Many years ago, a day after I finished moving out of my first apartment, my landlord called me up to say that I would not be getting my security deposit back because I had not cleaned the oven. I didn't want to lose that $100, so I asked if I could come back and clean it. They said it had to be cleaned by X date, so I agreed that it would happen. On X day, I show up ready to clean the oven, only to open the door and see that they had, just that day, revarnished the parquet flooring in the apartment. I called the landlord and explained my predicament, and they insisted that if the oven wasn't clean, I lost the deposit. Cue malicious compliance. I tied my shoes on tight and slowly walked across the sticky varnish, leaving footprints with every step. It took me 30 minutes to clean the oven, and the varnish fumes burned my eyes and lungs, but I got that oven sparkling. The next day, I got a call from the superintendent of the building yelling at me that I ruined the floor and that the new tenants were supposed to move in that day. He yelled that it would cost $400 to fix and that they had to delay the tenant move-in on order for it to dry. I calmly relayed the fact that I had asked the landlord about it and was told that unless that oven was clean, I lost my cash. He apologized and said he was going to have some choice words for my landlord. Luckily, I had already dropped off my keys and got my deposit back. I mean, OP did try to warn the landlord. If the landlord just wanted to work with OP, then it wouldn't have been a problem. But now the landlord's probably going to spend $400 to fix that. And our final story of the day is by MLMCMLM, Everything on the Side. This happened about a year and a half ago at the restaurant I work at. I'm a line cook, and at the time, there was a server we'll call Kevin who was cross-trained and sometimes worked back of house. So in other words, he knows how annoying some special orders can be for the cooks. We also happened to be besties and would constantly instigate the other to go one step farther. So at this point in time, we were understaffed and happy hour was actually unhappy hour for me. My shift didn't start till 3, but I'd come in at 2 to use the hour as time to set up my station since we weren't given prep time. At least that was the theory. What actually ended up happening was the morning crew would see me, assume their shift is done, and bail so I'd be stuck running the whole line alone the first hour of happy hour. It sucked. Now, this particular request wasn't the worst I've had, simply the cheeseburger, everything on the side. Kevin informed me it was a picky 15-year-old and her mom. For once, I wasn't getting slammed in the butt by orders, and while a minor request, splitting up ingredients on an item always irks me because many times the items complement each other and might not taste quite right individually, causing the entire dish to suffer a subpar review. Yes, maybe my head was up my butt a little, but Kevin gave me all the encouragement I needed when I repeated the order, emphasizing on the everything on the side, which he emphasized back with a laugh and wink. When this chick's burger was done, everything had its own ramekin or small plate to the point where half their table was topping plates. I'm talking lettuce, tomato, pickle, meat, melted cheddar cheese, bun, caramelized onions, and fries all had their own plate territory. As each plate came out, the mom laughed and laughed at the daughter, knowing exactly what was going on and loving it. Kid had a sour expression after realizing she'd have to play Build-A-Burger, but hey, careful what you ask for, right? Hey, you can't say that they didn't do a special order just for you. They took care of you. They got you a plate for every single thing you wanted on the side. That's pretty good service. Might be annoying, but you can't say they didn't take care of you. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So, which of these stories was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and turn notifications on if you haven't so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Any little thing that you do helps the channel grow so much more. Whether it's commenting, subscribing, or just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time, right here on the Storytime channel.